father realizes he had to let him go. He didn't want to. Now, the father knows what's best for the son, and the son, he's not earned this. But he has it all because of the father. He got the inheritance because of the father. Let's keep reading verse 13. It says, "And not many days after the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living." The son took his freedom, his belongings, his inheritance, and left. He made a decision, didn't he? The decision that he would make was one that he just wanted out of his father's house, perhaps. I made that mistake. He wanted to see the world through his own eyes, be free to make his own mistakes. Not what someone else said. That wasn't going to dictate his life anymore. He was going to get out and do it himself. He knew better. His dad raised him. He was a good kid, right? He could handle it. He could get away from the father's protection. Nonetheless, just as children or others do, we're going to have to walk our own path. I can't be there for my children 24/7. They're going to have to make their own decisions. That's reality. I mean, we want to protect them. We want to keep them under our wings for life, but we can't. I was talking to an older gentleman that lives down the road from me that I respect a lot. And he said, you take them to church. And he said, you raise them up in the way of God. And then you have faith that God's going to take care of them. He said, because you can't. So this son got out. Let's read verse 14. It says, "And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want." You know, we've all been guilty of things at times, whether it's something we do when we're younger or what. But when we get burnt, we learn, right? I mean, when it comes time, hey, don't do that, quit doing that, I'm going to get your butt. Then your butt gets gotten, you learn. And whether it's your dad doing it or something out in the world teaching you, when you trip and fall, that's when you learn. He spent everything. There was no budgeting, you know. He didn't know how long this was going to last. He was just enjoying life. He had fun without having authority. Probably just as most of our lives go, when we're broke, that's when the bills started to come in. Bills were easier to pay when there was money. But this situation was a little worse because there's no food. The bare essentials aren't there. Verse 15, "And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine." So this son who had everything, who lived life by his own rules, he's broke down now. He's out in the field feeding the swine. You know, he'd come a long way. It's good and bad. I think life has a way of shaping us. Sometimes it's for the better, and sometimes it's for the worse. I know for me, for some reason, I thought everything was just going to work out, you know. Well, having to do a lot for it or put a lot into it, I don't know. I never really thought about it that much. But when I come of age and got out, I got molded. I got shaped. We got to continually be learning. God knows how to get his children's attention. He knows how to get mine. He knows how to hit me and get me to look at him. And about face, like we talked about this morning. The parable of this child of God who runs from God. We're not going to enjoy the life of sin but for a season, as Hebrews 11:25 tells us. But just as this son, that as the young lions, when we're younger, we're more resilient. We're going to go out and we're going to change the world. Nothing's impossible. We can recover faster when we're younger. If I fall now, I don't feel the same tomorrow that I did if I fell when I was 18. It hurts worse. It's different as we get older. But when we're younger, God gives us that strength that we need because we're going to make more mistakes. But as we get older, that's when that wisdom starts kicking in that He gives us, right? We have a mindset then as we're younger that we don't realize all the work that things are going to take. We don't realize the whole process. Verse 16 says, "And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him." You know, he hit a low in life, and now he's starving. He has no food, no shelter. No one's willing to help him. Imagine that. You know, I'm not going to sit up here. I don't want to say anything to make you feel sorry for me. I think we've all been through a lot of things in life, and you know, I'm not trying to compare and make myself out to be worse, but it's a scary thought when there's no one to turn to, when you have no one, when you realize it's just you. I've been there, and it's not fun. He's there. And I'd said before, referencing back something, the faster a person hits bottom oftentimes in life, the faster they're going to hit recovery. Well, he's hit a spot where he realizes the bare things he took for granted at home are no longer available to him. Often, you know, he hit it wide open, but he was brought to a place here where he was humbled, he was scared, he was alone, and he had nowhere else to turn. Does that sound familiar? I've been brought to that place when I was trying to do something myself. It's interesting, though. Here's the thought. It's interesting as we say that if someone turns to us last for help, if they turn to us last for work or last to advice, we're offended, aren't we? Why didn't you come to me first? I would have helped you. I don't want to help you now because you didn't come to me first. God doesn't care about that. Think about that. We'll turn everywhere else but to God. And when we finally turn to God and we repent God's way, guess what? He don't care about that. I'm glad. I'm glad of that. God doesn't care so long as we do turn to Him. He's always willing to forgive, accept us back, accept us no matter where we've been, what we look like, where we turned for help before, just as the Father in this parable. He didn't care. Unlike the son that we're talking about here in verse 16, I would have probably stayed out there till I died. That's how stubborn I am. I ain't turning back. They ain't going to know I'm wrong. I'm not going back there. I would have been like that. The last thing to go is the pride sometimes, isn't it? Verse 17. "And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger?" You know, he starts thinking about home here, and as I was typing this yesterday, maybe he's sitting there and he's thinking of the smells of home or the gatherings of home. Isn't it funny? And maybe I'm weird, how a smell will take us back to a place. When I smell honeysuckles, I'm 8 years old on a dirt road on a Huffy bicycle. I mean, it takes me back to the creek I was beside, you know? Or strawberries sitting on the back of the sink, thawing out, you know? They had the good water juice in them. That takes me back there every time. And maybe something happened, and he was thinking of home. He was like, man, I messed up. I had it. I got away from the Father. Maybe he's homesick from broken fellowship. He misses the Father. That's the worst thing about, you know, discipline, isn't it? It's broken fellowship. There were things that he had that he was too comfortable with, and maybe he didn't appreciate, but he's missing it now. And he thinks to himself, my father's servants are better off than me. I'm literally starving to death. You know, it's at times, sometimes everything seems to be going their way, and at other times, I know with me, sometimes God's just really blessing. And then other times it's like there's a lot of opposition there, and it's like dealing with money. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. There's no worries. You're paying the bills. You're putting money back in savings, retirement. You're able to buy things you don't need, and then literally a month later, you'd be happy if you could just pay the bills. I mean, it's just in our spiritual life, we're the same way. We're up and we're down. I've been there. I don't know if you have been, but this child, he had it all. He had all the opportunities, all the options that one could ask for. He'd been humbled by his own decisions, right? His father set him up. His father's plans were to set him up. He just had to get out there and learn for himself a little bit. But we're going to talk about that. Let's read verse 18 and 19. It says, I will arise and go to my father and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. Just as a sinner like me does, he's going to go home, and he's going to try and go home, and he's going to depend on the mercy of the Father. Doesn't matter what place in his Father's service his Father puts him. He just wants to be with his Father again. He knows that there's safety with the Father, there's protection, there's provision, there's mercy. The power, the money, the recognition doesn't matter. That's where a lot of the time we mess up at. That's where a lot of churches mess up. It's power struggles. What we just did, and this is not written down, spur of the moment. The first time we did that, I'll admit I was a little discouraged. But today it didn't bother me. And when we were all like, yeah, let's seek God's will, that's encouraging, Amen. But it's not about power or recognition. It's about God's will. And that's where this boy had hit, this prodigal son. He didn't care about being somebody anymore. Being that man's son didn't mean the same to him now as it did then. It didn't matter about the power of what my dad had. Now it just meant I want to be with the Father. He left the power and the pride. He left with power and pride, shining and full of his own desires, his own want, his own lust in life. And now he's going to return home. He's going to be poor. He's going to be puny, smelling, humble, and willing to follow someone else's desires. He got broke. I love this next verse. Verse 20. And he arose and came to his father, but when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. I think about this. We all have routines. We get up and we do the same. I get up at the same time, try to every day. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to get my Mountain Dew. I'm not a coffee person. Turn on the Weather Channel, learn a little bit. I'm ready to go to work. But we all have routines. And one of my routines lately has been I get to wake up the kids before school. It's been a benefit lately. And I get to see them. And I like that. This father had a routine every morning. Maybe he got up at the same time every day. He'd walk by the boys' room on his way down to the porch, say. He was going to look, see what kind of day was ahead. He was going to plan the day. He'd walk by that boy's room, and I wonder where he's at. I wonder if he's still alive. I miss him. I just wish I'd seen him. Maybe every day he walked out on the porch, and he looked out across the field down the road, and he looked for the sun. He looked to see what was going on in the world that day. He loved the sun. He missed the sun. There was reminders and memories of this child everywhere in this home, inside this man's life. And he loved him perfectly. Maybe this day he looked across the field or the property and his prayers were answered. He could not make the boy stay. He could not make the boy see what he had right in front of him or make the boy choose him. But now he sees him walking home. He sees his son, all is forgotten, all is forgiven. The child's back where it belongs. This is why this is a great passage from God's Word. We're not going to live a perfect life, but we can be forgiven. But not without the Father. We're not going to be accepted on our own accord. It's only because the holy, perfect God who sent his holy, perfect sacrifice. 21. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. That's true repentance. He goes before the Father. He says, I'm wicked, I have sinned, I'm wrong. I shamed you, I shamed my family, I have nothing to offer you. I'm not worthy to be your son. I have nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. Here I am. You know, I'm 35. I hope I never don't feel what I'm feeling right now. Sometimes we as Christians, we get a little bit carried away, become the church, and we fall into our routines, and we take this salvation for granted, I think. And it's not good. Verse 22. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. The father said, all is forgiven. You're my child, and I just want you back. It's hard for us, I think, with our human minds to wrap around, because God can love unconditionally. I'm not capable of that. You're not either. You know, we're going to pick favorites in things. We're not perfect. We're not going to love perfectly. But the Father had no questions asked, no smart remarks. Bring him these things and give him the best of what I have, because he's my son. He got the blessings because of the Father. He didn't do anything to earn it. This is a picture of God. I don't want us to think about this in the sense that I'm saying it. I want God to get the honor and glory in this. That's why it's in his word. Let's look at 23 and 24. It says, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. This is a lesson, believe it or not, on Thanksgiving. We're supposed to be thankful. And they're having Thanksgiving right here. It didn't take a holiday for them to be thankful. This great feast is being prepared. It's a feast of Thanksgiving. His son who had left is found, once lost, but is now returned. He was dead. I knew him not, but is found alive. The end of verse 23 tells us everything we need to know about Thanksgiving. Let us be merry. It was a truly thankful time. They were truly happy. The son didn't do anything to earn the happiness. The father was happy. The son was happy. If we can take away something from this, you know, let's not have church services like other church services. I'm not saying let's change anything we're doing, but let's come in with our minds focused, our hearts ready, and let's be thankful for what the Lord's given us this day. Next Wednesday, next Sunday, let's come in and be ready to serve. When we go home and we're with our family, when we go to work, let's not fall into routine. Let us be merry. Let us be joyful, like we talked about this morning. Let's not darken a room when we walk in it, okay? Let's walk into a room and there's like, there's something shining about that guy. We talk to him. Let me tell you what the Lord's done for me today. Woo, you know. Give God honor and glory. If something good's going on in your life and someone says, hey, how's things going? Have they gotten better? God bless me this week. Let me tell you about it. That gives God the honor and glory. As a father of a family, let us show our families that we are truly thankful for all God has done for us. Let's finish reading here. Verse 25. It says, now his elder son was in the field, and as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. He said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. A lot of thoughts here. Oftentimes, I'll admit I'm a lot like this older son, where you feel unappreciated. That's what he was feeling. Instead of being happy to see his brother, he was angered. He feels disrespected, perhaps. This elder son, was thinking to himself. He was thinking of himself. He wasn't thinking of the father. What this day meant for the father. He was only thinking about himself. Notice the father went out to the son. He went out to get him. He wasn't going to let the same mistake be made twice. Verse 29 says, and he answering said to his father, lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. See this word merry that was brought up again here. The question I ask is this. Will the oldest son here have the same kind of thankfulness that the youngest son now understands? God uses everything for his honor and glory. We're going to mess up. We're going to get out. We're going to make mistakes. But we come back, we're more thankful. We're more apt to serve. The oldest son, though never had left the father, had gotten caught up in the routine of the day-to-day operations on the family farm there. He didn't look at the father the same way. He didn't see what that day meant to his father. It was breaking the father's heart to see his son like this, that he wasn't happy when his brother came home. Let's finish reading that chapter in verse 30 through 32. It says, but as soon as this thy son was come, which thou hast devoured the living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. Notice he brought up his own brother's sin. We'll get back to that. And he said unto him, son, thou art ever with me, and all I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. The oldest son missed the point. It wasn't about him. He was saying, hey, Dad, look, he went out and he laid with harlots. He spent all the money. I'm here with you all the time. He was making it about himself, wasn't he? This day was the day of the fathers. The son got the blessing, but this day was about the father. It really wasn't about the other son. The elder son made the right decisions. He pleased the father continually, but the youngest son was dead and is alive again to the father. Okay? I hope we're never as the elder son and become complacent in our lives and miss out on the opportunity to be thankful and to praise God's name. I'm not talking about emotion. I mean, truly a thankful heart. You know, God has blessed me, and others should be able to see my thankfulness. So I guess if we have to come up with some takeaways, let's be thankful and merry because the Father has blessed us. And it's not my place, but if you're back in here today and there's something standing between you and God, don't put it off. Run back to him as fast as you can. Count on the mercies of the Father. That's all I have this morning, Dirk, or this afternoon, Dirk. Would you come?
I'll stand and grab a hymn book. Number 314.